First and foremost, we're here to make sure that the city of Philadelphia knows that we are deeply regretful that this happened. This is not something that looks anything like the way we run our company and the way we manage our stores. So we're here to hopefully meet with the two gentlemen before we leave and have a conversation and to personally apologize for the situation that has happened to them.
Had that been set up?
And yes, it has been set up.
Okay.
And also to just to make sure that this city knows that we care about how you feel about our company and how we want this resolved.
I would just add that the situation that unfolded last Thursday and the outcome can only be described as reprehensible. That is not who Starbucks is, and it was wrong. And Roz and I share as partners in the responsibility to lead Starbucks and to operate Starbucks. And so for us to be here to ensure we fully understand the magnitude of the issue, be able to connect with local government community leaders, with our partners in the stores, and the opportunity to meet with the two gentlemen who were involved in this is very important.
What should have been done differently?
Good. I'll start with that. So, first and foremost, when I saw the video, it was deeply personal to me. And I saw the video.
Why is that?
Well, being an African-American leader and having a 23-year-old African-American son, you immediately become, it's personal. You see the two gentlemen. It was a hard video to watch. So when I think about that, I think about, our policies and guidelines and procedures that likely need to be evaluated. And that's one of the things in terms of the resolution and path forward is to evaluate what those guidelines should look like and give our teams that work in the stores the best tools to operate the buildings.
That leads me to my next question. What are your policies in regards to asking someone to leave? What is your policy in terms of when should a manager call police? Mm-hmm. What are your policies in regards to those two issues? So,
our guidelines, I should also say that the police should never have been called in this situation. And we recognize that. There are guidelines that our store managers and everyone in our, that works in our stores, they want to keep a building functioning. And this is where guidelines sometimes get sideways with the culture of your company. And that's what we are really adamant about trying to fix and reevaluate to say, are we in the right spot with guidelines versus the experience we want our customers to have in the building?
But what are the existing guidelines now? If someone's in the store, do they need to purchase something? That's part of the policy now. And can you only be a paying customer before you can use the bathroom? Yeah. What are the existing policies?
So one of the things we've learned in this extensive evaluation that we're doing is that there's a lot of ambiguity in our guidelines and policies, and that is what has to be addressed, is the ambiguity. It's left for interpretation, and that's not effective.
Yeah, I'll give you a sense. With 28,000 stores in communities around the world, we found that, in some local regions they've set some unique guidelines that might be specific to that region. And, in this particular instance...
Is that company-wide guidelines?
Well, there are company-wide guidelines, but all I'm saying is that in certain marketplaces, the local management will tune those a bit to fit, different things, because we operate in different countries, obviously in different cities and different markets.
Right.
And, in this particular situation, certainly the fact that the police were called was wrong. And there are instances where calling the police would be an appropriate action. If there's a threat or there's a disturbance or something creating a dangerous situation in our store, that's an appropriate place for one of our store partners to call the police. None of that existed in this case.
What should they have done?
They should have let those two gentlemen stay in the store and wait for the person they were meeting.
Absolutely.
There was no reason for those two individuals to, if somebody has a legitimate purpose for being in the store, even if they don't buy something, the guidelines state they should, you should let them stay. And they were there to meet another individual, and they should have been left alone.
Okay. Now I understand that this is my last before Mr. Booker. I understand there will be additional training.
Yes.
Has that been set up, and what would the training entail?
So what we're evaluating right now, we know is top of the list is the unconscious bias training.
Okay.
And we'd like to do that to 100% of our partners that work in our stores, as well as our home office in Seattle. And so this will be full across the board. We're hoping that we can get this done in the next 30 to 60 days. It's big, it's expansive for the number of partners that we have in the system.
And this would be nationwide.
Nationwide.
Would it be mandatory?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
What at this point has been done with the store manager, with the baristas that were involved
Mm-hmm.
in this incident?
Yes.
Well, let me start by sort of building on your comments.
Yes.
Starbucks was founded and created around this concept of the third place. And the third place we consider to be a warm, welcoming environment for all customers, where people have an opportunity to connect over coffee and tea. Certainly sharing a coffee or tea and having a human connection is something that's been going on for centuries, and Starbucks has really been built around that principle of the human experience and human connection, and creating a warm, welcoming environment in our stores for that to happen. In this instance, that did not happen, and that is a breakdown. Now, certainly, that is what we've got to focus on, is how could this ever happen? How could this ever be a situation where the police are called in a situation that is not appropriate, and things escalate to the point where not only the actions but the outcome are reprehensible? It was wrong. We acknowledge that. And so our job is to figure out how do we learn from it and address it. So the first step is doing a very thorough and thoughtful review of all matters. Certainly the store manager's decisions and
Yes.
actions in this situation. Thorough review of how could they ever get to the conclusion that calling the police was an appropriate thing to do by looking at the guidelines. Are we doing appropriate levels of training, not just on those guidelines, but as Roz said, around unconscious bias. And so the phases we're going through is really a deep, thorough, thoughtful review and understanding of all those matters, and we're going to be very, very intentional.
I find it curious that you used the word reprehensible, and I've not heard whether or not the manager or the baristas, whomever was involved in this, have not been dealt with and or fired.
Just suggests that the store manager is being dealt with. There's still some more of the review pieces that need to fall in place, and I would just ask for a little more time so that we do this in a thoughtful way. But I understand your question, and this was the store manager's decision. This is the store manager who called police, and so this is clearly that is under review.
Well, again, let's go back to the word that I keep seeing come up in a number of headlines, and that you've stated here at least twice, to my count, is reprehensible. And that's not a very casual word.
No, it is not.
So for you to use that term and indicate that the actions of one of your partners, someone who represents your brand,
Yes.
has violated that brand, I'm finding it a little more than curious that that hasn't been dealt with in a more severe fashion. It still seems to be, you still seem to be utilizing kid gloves in discussing what the status of the store manager and or the baristas that were involved in this action.
Yes. So let me say that this review and investigation is expansive. These guidelines and policies go across all of our stores in the U.S. And so we are not only looking at a situation that happened Thursday afternoon, we're trying to make sure we understand how are these guidelines interpreted. Where is the breakdown happening? We want to address this thing on many different fronts. And it would be easy for us to say we've got one individual and let's take care of that individual and then everything goes away. We're looking at this for a comprehensive view and to look at it very thoroughly, because the solution will be long lasting, will have impact across the organization, and it's not just something that we can make a decision about right now. But I can tell you there's a lot of work being done, and there's the right people on it and the right objective views on it. And this will come to the desk of Kevin and I, and we'll aid the company and how they look at guidelines and the impact on personnel in the company.
A couple of years ago, you were involved in that message, which was a response to Black Lives Matter, and it was something that was shared with, as I understand it, all of the partners in the United States.
Right.
And for everyone else at the table, the paperwork that I handed is just part of a full-page ad that was part of the Race Together campaign, which was an interesting attempt by the company to deal with race issues. And I think one of the big takeaways from this campaign were that many of the baristas, the people who have the contact with the public, were not comfortable in dealing with the issue of race. And race is a very sensitive thing, and people don't necessarily go to their third place to, they go there a lot of times to escape, not necessarily to go deep into
dealing
these issues.
with it. Right.
Now, there was a lot of conversation when this came out in 15, 16? It's about 3 years ago at this point, right? What's the end result of this campaign, which seemed to me a very honest attempt to embrace that difficult issue of race with your company?
Yeah.
Did this just fizzle or what?
No.
No, let me provide some context. Certainly, the Race Together was an intent to create a constructive dialogue around race, to help people put themselves in other people's shoes and start to better understand what people of different races and diversity in America experience. And it was in response to an observation that this is something that we believe is an important thing for our country, is for us to have a better understanding of one another based on compassion and empathy for the human experience. Certainly what we learned in this is that that's a very difficult conversation that people are not comfortable with. What it evolved to, though, was what we created around a program called Opportunity Youth. The output of our work in Race Together was the fact that we then observed that there were roughly 6 million young people between the ages of 16 and 24 years of age who were not in school and not at work. Many of these young people came from lower economic communities and communities perhaps that didn't have as much opportunity. And so at the time then we made a commitment to hire 10,000 young people from these cities, and we then partnered with many other companies, and we began to run in different cities basically an event that would bring all of these young people together, oftentimes with their families, for training on how to build a resume, how to conduct an interview, and we would actually have interviews at those events. Since then, we have exceeded 40,000. We had a goal with these other companies to hire more than 100,000 young people that we called Opportunity Youth. Since then, Since then, we've hired over 40,000 young people from Opportunity Youth, and we've committed now to hiring 100,000 of these young people as part of Opportunity Youth. And we think that that was an important part of the learning and the observation that we could do, and that we could play a role for using our scale for good in something that was related to an observation or learning as part of Race Together.
The other thing I would say too is that this is one of the reasons, and I think you've highlighted very well, why Kevin and I are here. Because as deep as our culture is around everything that we have committed to, these kinds of initiatives, the way we have invested in our partners, this is disturbing that we get to this day and this happens after everything we talk about with our leaders in our company and our stores, that something like this could happen. So this is it. You know, we are hoping that the next level of conversation around change, you know, this tells us that something broke down. That for all the good that we've tried to do and all the conversations we have and all the leadership development that we have, still something like this could happen. This is when guidelines get in the way of what your culture is, and we have to understand that better. We're not satisfied, and so that's why we're here.
Well, I'm still trying to make the connection. I understand what your initiative is in terms of your hiring practices, but the more aggressive conversation that you were having about race now 3 years ago, did that just, no pun intended, but fade to black?
No, that conversation has always existed and will continue to exist within Starbucks. The fact that we tried to take that to a conversation that extended to customers and other guests in our stores is where there was a significant amount of backlash. Our focus has been on the way then that we embrace diversity and inclusion within the company, and the way that we have done that you know, since the beginning of the company, and creating an environment that is full of opportunity for our partners. And we've reached out to these communities as an on-ramp to a better life with an opportunity at Starbucks. We then complemented that with additional things around opportunity. For example, our Starbucks College Achievement Plan, where now young people that we bring in, they can now get a 4-year degree through Arizona State University and graduate debt-free. So we have stitched together a number of things that we believe have helped us as a company continue that dialogue, and in the spirit of creating an environment that helps people embrace the human experience with compassion and empathy and a better understanding of one another. Those things have made us a better company.
And Mr. Randolph, I hope you don't mind. I've got like 4 questions. I just want to go over just a couple of things, and these are basically numbers.
First.
Mr. Bell, go ahead. I'm sorry.
By my count, there's 12 Starbucks in the greater Philadelphia area. I'm sure that number is wrong.
It's 33.
33, okay. In terms of what has transpired, nothing can be done about the past, obviously. I want to know specifically, what do you see needs to be done immediately to improve the race relations between Starbucks and the African American community, and the general consensus of what people think about Starbucks as of right now?
Okay. So first, I think we're going to uncover a lot when we go through this unconscious bias training. I have actually been through it before. Likely many of you all maybe have done that too, but it surfaces a whole new level of conversation. And if done well, which it will be done well, it makes each person evaluate their own personal biases and makes you either have to confront them or realize you have them. You could decide to do something with it or not, but it opens your head up to how you think and view people, instances, issues, discussions, and topics. And we are going to start at the top and go all the way through. This will be the work that we do over the next 60 to 90 days. And then we'll likely gather learnings from that. That will be insightful for us. We'll get a new temperature on the company. And then, you know, not knowing right now what that would uncover, there'll be some action plans out of that, because this should open up and help us understand what's next. And then this investigation is, an evaluation of what happened on Thursday is going to teach us a lot too. You know, I would expect, you know, I look forward to you all hearing from us in terms of the actions that are going to come out of our learnings. I can only guess what they would be right now, you know, after we do the training. But we've got work to do. That's what this signals, is that there's work to be done. So first and foremost, when I saw the video, I was sick. It sickened me because for a couple of reasons. Absolutely, I began to think again about my son, 23 years old. He lives in Brooklyn. And I immediately thought about him and his safety. And then secondly, I thought about how he must feel because my son is the kid that gets up on Saturday mornings and goes to Starbucks, and he looks like crap, right?
That's my son.
And so, and then I looked at those two men and said, those are the kids that hang out in my house when my son is home. Those are that's his crew. They look just like that. So it was deeply personal for me to figure out what the heck, right? What is absolutely going on here? Because this is getting, this doesn't feel good. And immediately what happens is I'm seeing it, and my son is hitting me up on the phone saying, Mom, what is happening? And so I explained to him, I said, well, listen, I'm going to get to Philadelphia as soon as I can. And he was like, yes, and you need to get this thing fixed. He was like, I don't like it. And he said, he also said to me, he said, and I really want you, he said, you got to do your best work on this. You have to do your best work. And so, you know, it's, now I'm on a mission. You know, when your kids talk to you like that, not through text,
Okay.
you see what I'm saying? So when they pick up the phone and call you, it's personal, and I have to do something here. I have a lot. I didn't come to this company for this. I'll just be honest with you. I came here because it meant something to me, because I could do a lot of other things, or I could sit at home. And I chose to be with this company because I really personally align with who this company is, and I'm personally embedded to make it right.